Broadway Nights, an excellent girly pulp in high grade with a story by Jack Woodford. Jack Dempsey's Fight Magazine. Scarce to begin with, and throw in a Robert E. Howard boxing story and you've got pure gold. Mystery Stories, a scarce title with a very odd cover, and I believe this magazine could well have been a mystery to most viewing it from the newsstands. Key Shorts, this wartime issue is exceedingly scarce. It's also in a phenomenal condition of VF. Published by King Publishing, which is one of the many names used by the publishers of the Spicy line of magazines. Gay Parisienne, also a phenomenal condition with a wonderful Enoch Bowles cover. This Detective Tales would have been a VF if not for the tan pages, but it can't take away from that Tom Lovell cover. Spicy Adventure Stories. Paper's nice, small piece out of the cover near the spine. Authors include Price Merrill and Robert Leslie Bellum. Paris Gaiety, a slightly larger than normal magazine, closer to 8 by 11 than a 7 by 10, with a great Ward cover. Red-Blooded Stories, a very scarce McFadden publication, has a L. Patrick Green story as well. Telling Tales, a cross between a regular pulp and what would become girly pulps. Live Stories from New Fiction magazine is a crossover with a wonderful July 4th themed cover. Scarlet Confessions, a bedsheet magazine that is half pulp, half true, quote-unquote, true confession magazine. Parisienne Review from 1939. The girly pulps had been censored out of existence, but this was their attempt at a comeback. Ace Mystery Magazine, periodical house's attempt at one of their few Weird Menace titles. Spicy Mystery Stories, a really high-grade magazine with the only Howitt cover I'm aware of on Spicy. Dr. Jensen, Popular's second attempt at recreating Fu Manchu's success. Liberty, a bedsheet magazine, not really a pulp, but it does include a nice Edgar Rice Burroughs serial. Pep Stories, a fine condition magazine and one of those before it went to softcore porn. Movie Humor, a high-grade magazine with a wonderful Quintana cover. This is the first issue of Undercover Detective. Although it looks like it, it's not a Weird Menace magazine, but it certainly has all the attributes. Bedtime Stories, a nice issue of this bedsheet-sized girly magazine. Private Detective Stories. This fine to very fine copy is produced by the same people who brought you Spicy Detective. A bedsheet-sized Stolen Sweets, scarce, especially in fine condition. Fight Stories, and this one's got everything. Robert E. Howard and a wonderful Earl Berge cover. This black mask has covers loose and some tan chipping paper, but what can you say? It's got a Chandler story. Spicy Detective Stories in fine condition with a Robert Leslie Bellum's Dan Turner story. This is a later Fight Stories, includes a Robert E. Howard story written under the pen name of Mark Adam. Regardless of the condition, this Underworld Romances from the Library of Congress is a scarce issue. This top-notch magazine features a Robert E. Howard story, one of only a few that they published during his lifetime. Hollywood Nights from 1936. It's the first issue of a short run of magazines, all scarce. Movie Western. This is one of a small number of copies that the super low-budget Albing Publications released. Action Stories. This VG condition copy includes a Robert E. Howard story. Popular Magazine from 1931. Released during the Depression, this is one of the few issues that remained still priced at 25 cents. Spicy Adventure Stories. Since Spicy did not have a science fiction magazine, they released their few science fiction stories here. Spicy Adventure Stories from 1940, which includes an Australian Aboriginal cover. Super Detective Stories, a scarce bedsheet issue. This title folded and re-released later as just Super Detective. Complete Gang Novel, published by Harold Hersey. This is super scarce, especially in fine to very fine with off-white paper. Two Gun Stories. About 3/4 of the way through the run, it was retitled Two Gun Western Stories to avoid confusion, I guess. Spicy Detective Stories. This is fairly high grade, would be even better if it wasn't for the small piece out of the spine. Spicy Detective Stories, March of 1941. This includes Hugh B. Cave writing under the very tongue-in-cheek Just in Case. Spicy Adventure Stories from July of 36, with stories by Merrill, Bellum, and Hugh Cave writing as Just in Case. Saucy Movie Tales with another wonderful Norman Saunders cover signed as Blaine. Spicy Adventure Stories. Missing a piece off the back cover, this would have been graded higher if not for that. Tales of Danger and Daring. This is the first issue under that new retitled, and a Library of Congress copy to boot. Short Stories with a William F. Soar cover. Spicy Adventure Stories, August of 37. Stories by Bellum, Merrill, and again Hugh Cave writing as Just in Case. Detective Fiction Weekly. Story by Earl Stanley Gardner, and it also includes a copy of his Paycheck from Munsey. Spicy Detective Stories. Also includes a story by Spider's author Norval Page writing as N. Wooten Poge. Spicy Detective Stories. Includes an E. Hoffman Price and a wonderful H.J. Ward cover. Romantic Western. A high-grade copy of this title that pulled back on the overt sexism of the spicy titles. Real Confessions. Most confession titles were large bedsheet productions. This title was produced by Martin Goodman, soon to be the publisher of Marvel. Snappy Stories. A mixture of romance and titillation with a Christmas-themed cover. Sports Story Magazine. A scarce copy with a Robert E. Howard story, along with a feature using the house name Maxwell Grant, normally held in reserve for The Shadow. Tattle Tales, May of 37. An above-average copy with off-white paper. Dime Detective Magazine. An exceedingly high-grade copy, including a gruesome torture cover and an Earl Stanley Gardner story. Fight Stories. Although we've auctioned a number of these Robert E. Howard issues of Fight, we can't stress enough how difficult it is to find these issues. Tropical Adventures. Published by a very minor pulp publisher, Carwood, these are very rare in any condition. Black Book Detective. One of those rare instances in which two characters sharing multiple traits come out within weeks of each other. Black Bat and Batman. Screen Humor. A first issue of this scarce amalgam of Hollywood tell-all and girly pulp, and edited by Harold Hersey. Clever stories. Scarce issue, as these are nothing but returned and rebound issues of Smart Set, Saucy Stories, and Black Mask. Spicy mystery stories. One of the most iconic covers for pulp collectors. Perhaps H.J. Ward's best cover for Spicy. Gang World. One of the first 4 titles by Popular and in high grade. Very hard to come by in any condition, let alone this fine. Zeppelin Stories. This title is one of the holy grails for pulp collectors. The word scarce hardly suggests how difficult it is to locate one. Wall Street Stories. First issue of only 2 issues published. Not great timing, as the stock market would crash in less than a year. Another scarcity. Pep Stories. Published by Harry Donenfeld, his company dominated the newsstands with the girly pulps, with nude and semi-nude, quote-unquote, art studies. La Paris Stories. Another Harry Donenfeld title under the Merrill publishing name. Spicy Adventure Stories. Another high-grade Spicy featuring stories by Merrill, Bellum, and a snake cover by H.J. Ward. Spicy Western Stories. One of the 4 Spicy titles, this one features a bondage cover by H.J. Ward. Paris Nights. A nude bondage cover, although not certain what our bound female has to smile about. Spicy Detective Stories. This title by the end of 1942 would be retitled Speed Detective, bowing to the pressures brought about by civic groups. French Follies, a previously unknown issue. No year listed, and this could very well be just reprints from other girly magazines. All Detective Magazine includes a wonderful cover by Norman Saunders and stories by Doc Savage author Lester Dent and Earl Stanley Gardner.